welcome to Freedom Fighters Code Grey. This is a show where we discuss human trafficking, an issue that's taking place in our own backyard. What supports are available for family members and loved ones who know someone that's experiencing trafficking? Well, we're going to dive into that question today. Now, if you're tuning in and you're in a situation of immediate danger, please call 911. If you're looking for information and support related to human trafficking, you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline 24/7 at 1-833-900-1010. Today, I have with me John Castles, who is the project director for Lifeworthy. And I'm just so grateful for him to be here today and to have this conversation. Welcome, John.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, just to start off with, if you could share a little bit about who you are and maybe how it came to be that you got involved in anti-trafficking work.
Okay, yeah, I've been in youth work since 1984, actually, and never planned on working with people who were trafficking victims, but I kept running into it in my work over the years, and so in 2007, I really began to study the issue of human trafficking, and here we are in 2023, and we've got a huge and growing human trafficking problem in Ontario.
Now, some of the folks who are viewing the show and tuning in today may have heard you just say that and go, what, human trafficking? Like, human trafficking is happening in our community? And they may not even understand what that is. Could you just take some time to briefly explain, like, what is human trafficking? What does it look like in Ontario? Maybe who are the traffickers and who are the trafficked persons? How is this happening?
Sure, yeah. So human trafficking, quite simply, is using coercion to exploit people for profits. And so that's the key word, coercion. If you have a job and you feel exploited, can you quit and leave, or is there some type of control that's keeping you there and preventing you from having your own agency where you can actually leave an exploitative situation? So it happens in labor, and it happens in the sex industry. And so most of the human trafficking that we're seeing in Ontario is happening in the sex industry activities, and especially prostitution.
So when you say there's different kinds of trafficking, so we've identified labor and sex trafficking as well, like, who are the people that are being trafficked? And you mentioned coercion. How does coercion happen? How does someone end up being in a situation potentially where they are being exploited by someone?
Yeah, so human trafficking plays out a little bit differently depending where you are in the world. And there are places in the world where human trafficking looks very much like going and catching a person and kidnapping them and forcing them behind locked doors to perform activities that'll make money. In what we're seeing in Canada isn't usually that. Sometimes it is, but most often it's through coercive control. So it's a system of almost brainwashing a person. And so we're seeing a lot of people coming up, especially from the larger urban areas, to smaller communities like you have in Simcoe County, and becoming the boyfriend and wooing a young lady who may be quite young, 14, 15, 16 years old perhaps, and they believe that they're falling in love. And then through a process that is quite manipulative, become very much psychologically controlled. So you can have physical chains, or you can have these invisible chains that are really deceptive and quite fraudulent. But that's generally what we're seeing is, and it can happen pretty much to all ages and male and female, but mostly human trafficking in Canada is impacting women and girls.
And you mentioned boyfriend. So, the person who may be potentially exploiting someone is not a stranger, not someone, they met only once and got into a difficult situation. This person, in some aspects is building a relationship, showing someone love, but then, like you said, coercing, manipulating them, and pushing them into a situation where they're ultimately exploited.
That's exactly right. And You know, it's interesting because there's a lot of awareness, and I just saw in the Aurelia newspaper that they're rolling out a new program for the high school kids, for grade 9 kids actually, to teach them about avoiding human trafficking. And yet, so many of the young people who get caught in it may only realize that they're a human trafficking victim months and months down the road once they begin to be exploited. So it's really that deceptive. And the traffickers, they study, they get taught by senior traffickers, experienced human traffickers. They buy human trafficking manuals online. So they're not necessarily that bright to begin with, but they read, there's a system by which they can form these what is often called trauma bonds or Stockholm syndrome with their victims.
Now, you are the director of a project called Lifeworthy, and so it would be really great if you could just take some time to share how this project started and what it's all about.
Right. So one need that's really been overlooked is the parents and family members who have a daughter who's being exploited. And so we don't have a lot of resources for that at all in Canada. So it wasn't until 2016 a couple approached me in their time of need with a daughter being exploited, and I didn't know where to send them. So long story short, we began trying to figure out how do you run a support group program for parents whose daughters are entering the sex industry, and of course in most cases are becoming trafficking victims.
Wow. You mentioned parents and loved ones, and I just know even from my own experience working in the field how it's so painful and so difficult when someone you know, even people that I know who are experiencing exploitation. So that kind of support, it's really amazing that you're offering this to the community and that it exists. Why do you think that it's so important to come alongside these family members whose loved one is experiencing exploitation?
Yeah, when parents reach out to us, they are a mess. And they're not sleeping at night, they're not functioning well, their emotions are all over the place. They are, in fact, almost every time that we meet a family in the situation, they're experiencing or exhibiting the signs of secondary traumatic stress.
Wow.
So they've got their own trauma from what they're going through, but they're routinely told, let the professionals handle it, we'll investigate this, we'll bring you back in the loop. It might be a year, 2 years down the road, but we'll try to get to the bottom of this. And that's not good enough for parents who are going through the anxiety of seeing their daughter become somebody else. In a lot of cases, they have some ongoing contact with their daughter because of these invisible chains. Their daughters may be able to occasionally reach out and be in touch. But the parents are in such need. One thing, too, we're seeing is that this human sex trafficking seems to be coming more and more into the mainstream. So by that I mean it used to impact primarily kids who were in foster care and kids who were growing up in broken families who were really on the margins of society. And now we're seeing kids coming from intact homes with really strong parenting who are the last kid you would think would be vulnerable. They're good in school perhaps, they're an athlete, they've got a lot going for them, and how could they possibly fall victim? But our society and especially our youth culture is changing, and the human trafficking, the agents of human trafficking, those who seek to exploit our children, are brazen and ruthless.
I think what you just highlighted is so important for our viewers to catch and understand, that anyone can experience exploitation, right? Regardless if there's a risk factor present, that, because some people might be thinking, they're listening to the program like, that could never happen to our family, that could never happen to our kid. And what I hear you saying is that often situations are coming that and parents are just, it's the unthinkable. They would never have thought that this could have happened in their home.
That's right.
Would you have any suggestions or ideas of what, potential caregivers and parents who are listening to the show, what can they be saying to the youth in their home and their kids in the home to just expose the reality of sex trafficking in the community?
Yeah, it's certainly something we don't want to shy away from. We need to be having these conversations, but parents need to be more vigilant. I think we as parents often feel like we don't want to crowd our children or stifle them. We need to give them more space. We need to give them more autonomy. But we live in a day and time when traffickers are able to reach literally into our kids' bedrooms through the online platforms and be influencing and shaping their thinking, perhaps in the middle of the night when we think our kids are at home and they're safe. So we need to be very vigilant and try to figure out where are the potential gaps and where are the vulnerabilities of our kids, right?
Now back to the Lifeworthy project and going back to the family and loved ones who know someone that's being trafficked. Could you briefly summarize what supports are being offered? What does this program look like for those who reach out and access the service?
Yeah, so we essentially originally started providing support for the young women who were exiting trafficking situations. And that's a very difficult process because now you're dealing with somebody who has deep trauma, who really has taken on a different identity of looking at the world differently, feels completely out of place and doubts if they'll ever get a regular job or be able to return to school. And so we start there and work with those young people, often referring them to specialized services, and we provide social support and spiritual care. Our agency is a Christian agency with the parent organization SIM Canada that has people all over the world doing amazing work. The other thing we do, though, is we have a group for the parents and other family members. We call it Parents Hope. And these are services that can be accessed from anywhere in Canada. So we do Zoom calls for our support group meetings, and it's tremendous to have somebody from Ottawa and somebody from Alberta and somebody from California all coming together. But we have our support group meetings online, and as much as possible, we'll meet together in person. But many of the parents who reach out to us are many hundreds of miles down the road, but we're able to provide the care and the guidance that they're looking for.
Well, John, I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, this program that you're offering the community. We're going to take a short break and continue this discussion in a few minutes.
Calling all journalism students, Omni Television is once again awarding scholarships to qualified students pursuing a career in third language journalism.
Having this opportunity to envision what life as a foreign language journalist could look like is crucial to determining where I make my next career move. I can't wait to start putting this funding to use.
Omni is home to a variety of locally produced current affairs programs and daily national newscasts, broadcast in 6 languages. To learn more about Omni scholarships, visit omnitv.ca/scholarships.
back to Freedom Fighters Code Gray, a show where we discuss human trafficking. In today's episode, I have with me John Castles. He is the director of the special project called Lifeworthy, and we are discussing what this project is and how they're coming alongside the family and loved ones who know someone who's been trafficked. So, John, I'm just so glad that you are here and having this conversation with me today. And I was wondering, just to start off this segment of the show, could you maybe reflect and share a story of how the parent program at Lifeworthy has been able to make an impact, make a difference in someone's life?
Right, yeah. So we generally think of human trafficking victims being rescued by the professionals, and that does happen. Police especially, and sometimes social workers or outreach workers will get involved in that and do great work. What we're seeing is the parents make a massive difference. In fact, the Polaris Project from the US has done a lot of research around this, and they've discovered that the #1 source of support for young women trying to exit trafficking situations is family and close friends.
Wow.
Much more than people like myself. So this has been quite a learning curve for me since we started our Parents Hope group about 6.5 years ago. Yeah, you asked for a story. Your viewers are mostly in Simcoe County, so why don't I use a Simcoe County? We have several families who have been involved with our work, and a lot of it's online, and so they can call us on the phone, they can Zoom in to our support group meetings. And just a few months before the COVID lockdowns occurred, we had a family, a mom and a dad, reach out to us for support, and their 20-year-old daughter was being exploited by a Toronto area pimp, and it was brutal. The young lady was able to come home, and that's how much confidence these pimps have that their control over these young women is ironclad, that they'll always come back, they'll always do exactly what they're told, because they develop this loyal bond with their victims, so their victims will always try to please and always be afraid to not do what they're told. And so this young lady was able to come home for Christmas, and anyway, we did have an opportunity. She was wrestling with the reality that she was maybe being exploited, and her parents were trying to help her understand what was going on. And she stayed home for a number of weeks before the coercive control was too great, because she just couldn't give up her telephone and she couldn't stop the conversations. But in that interim, we had some time to really lay some groundwork, meet with the young lady a couple times, continue to meet with the parents. They lost her, of course, back into the sex industry. So she had been exploited for about 5 months, and then she went back again. And it seems unbelievable, but it's that bond with their trafficker and that sense of loyalty. They really get in their head, and they really become very oriented very, very differently. So over the course of time, that young lady went through deeper and deeper exploitation, and to the end, 7 more months later, she was at this crossroads where she got to the place where she thought, I'm going to get out or I'm going to die. Wow. And she had, in her case, an option. I could rely on my family, because it was a very strong family who loved her deeply and who was unwavering in their commitment to her, or I could just check out. I could just kill myself. And I may as well kill myself, because I don't think I'll ever get better. I've been traumatized too deeply. I'm too damaged. But in the end, she chose to reach out to Mom, and her parents did this amazing, amazing work. That's in total 12 months of exploitation. And the trauma from that, it's going to take a decade or more to really get beyond that. But this is a rare case because it ended at 12 months. of exploitation. We often see it go on 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or longer before we have the opportunity to help the parents. So here's a good example of what we see in our Parents Hope program is a lot of the parents, when they come to us, they're falling apart. They don't know how to make sense of what's happening. Through the support and the guidance they receive, they're then able to pick themselves up and be that strength, be that solid home base for their daughters to come back to. And when their daughters do come home, like in this case, they say, thank you guys at Lifeworthy for what you've done for us as parents, because you enabled us to be there for our daughters. We couldn't have done it otherwise. So that's a lot of what we're seeing. This young lady who I mentioned from Simcoe County, just 2.5 years out of that, is gainfully employed, engaged to be married, just doing really, really great, but still can't sleep at night because of the mental health issues, the night terrors, and has panic attacks, but is winning, is getting better and overcoming.
And overcoming. That is such a heartbreaking and then also inspiring story. Like, I think the fact that this family could be equipped with the tools to know how to continue to stay in contact, continue building bridges of communication, because what we know about trafficking situations, it often takes people multiple attempts to be able to exit, if they are able to exit. And like you keep mentioning with the coercion, the trauma bonds are so deep, the psychological manipulation, right? And earlier you mentioned Stockholm Syndrome. And so the fact that the family can play such a vital role in ensuring that someone knows there's a safe place to call, that there is an open door, so that when that individual is ready to exit, like this young lady that you've mentioned is in a place where she's able to step out and reach out for help and support, that they're there. Like, that's so incredible that they were able to stop the cycle of exploitation. Mm-hmm. And now that this person is on their healing journey, and like you said, it's a long road to recovery, right? I know individuals who've been exited for over 50 years, and it's still like that's why we need mental health supports and care and community for people who are in situations of overcoming what they have experienced. But thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for the part that you and your team have played to come alongside this family and ultimately bring the family all back together, right? And remove exploitation from what was happening in their situation. Now, someone might be listening right now and thinking, like, they may have a loved one who is currently being trafficked. They may have, a family member who is being exploited in the area and not sure what to do and not sure how to keep that, door open in terms of communication, and feeling overwhelmed, like this story maybe seemed too good to be true to them. Mm-hmm. Like, what would you say to that family and those loved ones?
The person that's being exploited needs you to be the solid rock, needs you to be strong so that they can reach out for support. Often the relationships between the exploited daughter and the parents or other family members become so volatile because the mental health of that person, whether they're being trafficked or whether they're just really deeply immersed in the sex industry, we see their mental health falling apart. And so the parents, of course, want to address their concerns, and then there'll be a big blow up. And this is to be expected. The parents need to find tactful ways, continuing to come alongside them, remind their daughter of their love, remind their daughter of their worth, and continue to, in gentle and loving ways, address the problems that they see. It will be volatile, but without that messaging, we find that the daughters often feel like nobody's advocating for me, nobody's protecting me. I guess this is my lot in life. And they don't have the courage often to make the changes and get away from the exploitation.
So if that family is listening right now and they're thinking, I would like to be a part of a peer support group, or, they might have questions for you, how could they get in touch and access some of those resources?
Yeah, they can look up our website at www.lifeworthy.ca. There's a Parents Hope page there for the parents and family members, and there's contact information. They can reach out to Linda, who coordinates the program, and we'll be right in touch. So it's very easy to reach out. We can have some discussions and see if our supports might be of help.
Amazing. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is that, and the story of impact that you shared, when someone's exiting a situation of sex trafficking, or when someone's exiting the sex industry for that matter, that there's a long healing journey ahead of them. And so there's another program that Lifeworthy offers specifically to those who are exiting. I was wondering if you could quickly summarize in a minute or two, what this program is, and also just the importance of caring for those who have now exited that situation and are growing in their healing.
Right. So Lifeworthy, of course, our slogan is we offer hope and help to individuals and families exploited by human trafficking. So when we come alongside the young women, we try to look at where the gaps in service are, because 20 years ago there was little in terms of supports, and now there's a lot more services available specifically for victims of exploitation in the commercial sex trade. And so there is counseling, there's sometimes housing supports, there's sometimes supportive groups, but we feel that most of the young women really they're not able to find a sense of community. And so that's what we really try to provide is community support, where they feel like they belong to something with other young women who are exiting and recovering, so we provide those supports, and along with it we provide spiritual care. So I mentioned, I think in the first half, that we're a project of SIM Canada, and we're a Christian organization. And interestingly enough, a lot of the young women who have been in the sex industry come out with stories of either encountering God or at least becoming very avid, active in their prayers, because they're hoping that there's a God who would protect them, who might still find that there's some value in their lives. And so they've got questions, and they want that spiritual care as well. And so we offer that.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time to share today, and just for the incredible work that you and your team are doing to come alongside those who are exiting situations of exploitation, but also their family and their loved ones. If you are tuning into the show today and you're in a situation of immediate danger, please call 911. If you are looking for information and support related to human trafficking, you can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline 24/7 at 1-833-900-1010. Thank you so much for tuning into our program today, Freedom Fighters Code Gray. We hope to catch you at the next episode.